Let's shift to culture a minute, which is how does an organization's culture influence team effectiveness? How do your engagements address culture in a way that optimizes overall effectiveness? So, Kim?
I think, one of the things we all know is how an organization's culture can obviously really hurt or help individuals and the organizations and how they're functioning and the effectiveness of that. There's so many ways that an organization, that its culture can either shut down or actually encourage great ideas, tamp down or enhance the morale, or reward or penalize a leader's growth. That we've all seen so many examples of that. And it's, those subtle ripples and undercurrents that we learn as we're starting to work with executives. So I think that that's such a piece that my goal in all of the engagements is to really fully understand how the culture is impacting the individual and how it may be hurting their growth, and what it is that we can really look at in terms of the things that they can change and how I can help them influence those things. But also, how do I help them successfully navigate the things that they can't change or influence, right? Some of these cultures are embedded and it's going to take time and energy, especially at the senior executive level. So there are some things that people have to learn how to navigate. How do they show up in those situations in a way that isn't so energy intensive in terms of draining, but also difficult for them in terms of how they're perceived?
Makeda, same question about culture.
Yeah, I would say again, I appreciate this question because I think we are all very much focused on getting the what done of our organizational efforts, but the culture really emphasizes the how, and we need to understand what that is. I love what Kim mentioned. Sometimes in helping individuals through their efforts as leader, we need to actually understand what are the truths of this culture. Is it a collaborative culture? Is it a more of a hierarchical culture? What are the things in your own leadership style that resonate with that? And where might you need to flex? And again, in the spirit of HR leaders kind of being so accountable for the influencing in their role, it's so important that that understanding of culture is present in how they show up, but also in influencing or creating and shaping what that looks like in the future. So I'm glad that the culture is a focus, but I think if anything, I would say more time can be dedicated to that in terms of how we're influencing that as leaders, but of course, HR playing a significant role.
And Makeda, have you seen an increase in the awareness of how important and critical culture is to overall business performance?
I would say yes. And I had mentioned in our discussion earlier, just in looking at where organizations are in their journey, being able to, I would say the cost has been when we haven't looked at culture, sometimes we don't get to the business success we're looking for. So thinking of two companies coming together in a merger, we're rushing and getting everything ready for day one and announcing, and suddenly we stop, not realizing that these two organizations have operated differently. Culture really says we need to reestablish what are those common ways of working, right? So that we can continue to engage in what the success of the business is. And it's that piece, it's the intangible sometimes that we can't find it in a dashboard. We don't always have ways that we can see it, but it is so important as HR colleagues that we give voice to that and making sure there's an intention around what is the culture that we want versus it being assumed it'll just happen.
Thanks. Supriti?
So one of the themes that I've observed in the last few years, especially during COVID, was this shift to team coaching. Before that, a lot of our work was one-on-one, we went in person, all of that, right? And the fact that globally it sort of reset that button on we're all virtual now. And I think a lot of L&D professionals then kind of obviously immediately shifted to what tools we have and so on. But to me, that shift to team coaching has become much more visible now. And I link it to the idea of culture, because as coaches, what coaches do during the assessment process of the teams is one of the things that get unpacked through our Crenshaw toolkit is the values, right? What is it that you care about? What are some beliefs you hold? What are some values you hold? And therefore, what kind of behaviors is that leading to? and that forms part of the culture. And sometimes we can have competing values. I can value achievement and I can value helping others. And at times you have to choose. And so I think the team conversations, the team coaching work is very, very powerful in uncovering some of that and uncovering people's own biases around their values, I think.
And so you've seen an increase in engagements for team effectiveness or optimization. And how do you play culture into it, like in the engagement itself?
The discovery process is helpful, right? As part of the discovery process that we do as assessors, the one-on-one interviews to understand, right, how are decisions made. And there's the formal org structure, and then there's kind of the people who are really in the know, right? So I think that really uncovers a lot of these sort of micro behaviors of culture, the nuances.
Right.
And then I think it's easier to bring that in. I mean, we did a workshop for a client of ours where the discovery was very helpful in understanding, how not just the leader, but how the colleagues were playing with each other.
Right.
And, then you just put it out there, like, here's the data. There's no judgment, this is what we are observing.
Yeah.
And and people respond to that.